Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Bluesman, Johnny Blues. With this video, I wanted to respond to my good friend and brother Joe, TJ Pyramid's recent video talking about, this kind of aesthetic people get into their minds that, you have to grow up, you have to act like an adult, and some people treat things that they like, they genuinely get into, that are interests of theirs, as if they're, something tainted or something they have to hide away. And it just really irks me and annoys me that even at this late stage of humanity's development, we're still adhering to this idea of, well, people can't always like everything, Just watching a movie the other night, and there was a scene, this was a movie from the 1930s, granted, but still, the guy was like, oh, you want me to go into a toy store and buy toys? What's wrong with you? That kind of thing. And this is something that's been ongoing between I and my sister over many years, and she's actually guest starring in this particular video. Say hello, click it 000.
Hey.
And she's going to start us off with one or two events that she personally experienced along these lines. So take it away, click it.
Well, I was in one of our bookstores one time, like a few years ago. We decided to go and check it out. And I was in the kids section getting Bernstein Bears books, which I love, and I loved since I was a kid. And I don't care what anyone says, I'm still going to love these books until the day I die. And the snobby old lady comes over and she's like, oh, do you have any kids? And I hate when people have to come up and bother me when I'm minding my own business, just trying to browse. And she kept, getting in my way until I would answer her. So I just said out of frustration, yeah, I have a 2-year-old daughter, just because I wanted her to leave me the hell alone. And she's like, oh, and as she's walking away, I could have sworn I heard her say something like, oh, you're kind, huh? Oh, because I was wearing black. I had, my black lipstick on and piercings. And she probably assumed I must be, some freaky weirdo walking around trying to taint the quote-unquote normal people and all that stuff.
So in other words, she's basically treating you like, oh, you have to be shameful to be a teenager at the time or whatever age you were, or, a young adult kind of situation, and you want to go in and pick up a book you remember from childhood, relive the thing that you loved in childhood.
Yeah, I basically felt shame because I felt like if I admit it's for me, that's going to make me even worse to this person. When she was already looking at me like, what are you doing in here,
Yeah, what are you doing in here in the first place? I got this similar treatment when I was in Best Buy a long time ago. And the sis and I, both really fell in love back when we still had cable with the Nickelodeon TV show iCarly, because it really kind of hit close to home. It was about an older brother taking care of his younger sister. They were on their own for all intents and purposes. He was a goofball. I'm a goofball. And, the sis is awesome. His sis in the show was awesome. So it really hit close to home. And it was, what's more, thoroughly entertaining. So I'm in Best Buy, and I go from the anime section over to where they have all the kids' shows and stuff like that, and I'm looking at the volumes. I think at that point they only had 1 or 2 volumes out, and I see, people kind of looking at me as I'm standing in the aisle, like, what am I even doing there? Why would I be interested in shows with kids and all that kind of stuff? Not even, aware of the fact, what the basic creation of these shows were, the adults behind it, the comedy behind it, and everything like that. It's written specifically with parents and children in mind, so that it's a multi-generational thing. And people don't even begin to know that. They just see a kid on the cover, and they think, oh, this guy's a freak. He's in there for some, nasty reason or something like that. And it appalls me that whole aspect of judging people, whether they look a certain way or whether they act a certain way. I think we're finally getting over it to a point. I mean, there are still a lot of places, especially in North America, where, small town thinking basically is small-minded thinking. But I think we're seeing a broadening of acceptance and the geeky side of people, the comic book movies and actually reading young adult fiction. And as you were saying, Joe, I am totally annoyed that I have to go into the children's section of my library to get comic books that shouldn't, by all rights, probably be accessible to them, some of them. I mean, I was reading one about a guy trying to kill himself. Another, in the same volume, a chick gets the crap beaten out of her by a crazy former mutant in the X-Men universe, beaten and bloodied and all this stuff. You got people who are coming off drugs, and it's like, yeah, let's go and put this in the 3 to 5-year-old book section. So it's people who don't understand what culture is and the evolution of culture.
That brings me to another event. We had been in our local Walmart, and we've always gotten shit on in that fucking store. The workers would always follow us around and gawk, and you had the fat, balding security guard with the cigar mustache always coming around looking at you like, oh, what are you doing? And he dispenses little hand-me-down rent-a-cop wannabe workers and all that, because we usually would go in there, late at night, and, we wear black, so everybody sees us as, goth and all that. And obviously that's some sort of bad thing to the quote-unquote normal people, the mainstreamers and all that. So for the longest time, they'd be following us around. One time, we went into the toy section, and I was looking at, Barbie dolls and stuff I wanted to get that I remember, again, as I was a kid, And this guy comes down the aisle, he crosses his arms, and he's, staring at me. And I'm like, can I help you? And he's snotty, oh, can I help you? Is there anything I can help you find? And I'm just again, it's what the hell is wrong with these people who judge you based on your appearance? It's sick.
Yeah, and basically trying to clamp you down into what they perceive to be societal norms and all that kind of stuff. It's if I want to read a children's book that I remember from childhood, I'm going to go into a store, I'm going to buy it, I'm going to carry it around. I don't care if people see me with it and think something weird. If you're going to prejudge and you're not going to ask, or to a certain extent, some people come up and they ask and they're very condescending in the way they ask, so even that can be offensive. But, I mean, if you're going to just make knee-jerk reactions, you're not going to try to understand the thing that, you probably get into, you might have interest in yourself. You're just going to kind of, conform to this idea that, well, we all have to be a certain way, and that's how you have to live your life. You have to grow up. You have to act your age. Another phrase I highly agree with, Joe, I can't stand, because age is only a numerical equivalent. It's all about how you feel as a person. It doesn't matter how old you get, as long as you still hold on to that light of life and that magic that you have born in you as a kid. A lot of people get that, kicked and beaten and stamped down, and then they add to it themselves. Basically, I have to be responsible. There's a difference. There's a distinction between growing up, being responsible, and still having fun. Doesn't mean you have to lose all of that stuff.
Yeah, and they come into your house, for example, and they're looking around the Black Plague has just come around. There was this girl that I was friends with that our old roommate, he was our mother's boyfriend, and after she passed away, he stuck around with us. He went to a local church, and, want to talk about condescending. Anyway, this girl was around my age, and the pastor and his wife figured, well, hey, this girl would be nice for her to hang out with because she needs friends and all that. And she came into the house one day to pick me up to go to the fair, and my brother was watching Smallville, and she's like, oh God, Superman, evil, evil. And then I said, well, why don't we go in my room and sit down and talk? And she sees the posters on my wall. She sees that I got stuffed animals and Bernstein Bears books. I got toys and stuff from my childhood. And she's like, what? Is this really your, room? I mean, is this all your stuff? How old are you? And at the time, I was 18, and I told her, and she's like, you're an adult, and you keep all this stuff in your room, and I wanted to throw up right there.
Yeah, exactly the same kind of situation happened to me. This was the other big event that kind of left me just really irked and really wow, is this the way people are? You know, that kind of situation. We had to have our apartment recarpeted and tiled and stuff like that. And the people they sent in, one of them was this muscle-bound Lou Ferrigno wannabe. I mean, he was a real, you know, you could tell this guy was compensating or overcompensating. Yeah. And he comes into my room, and, you know, if you've seen in my videos, it looks pretty much the same as it does now, although some of the posters back then were different. But my room has, you know, action figures, toys hanging up on thumbtacks, posters all over the place, mini posters, huge posters, and all that kind of stuff, and very much is reminiscent of how I kept my room as a teenager. This guy comes in, and he's, like, looking at the walls, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, this is your room? Like, he could not believe that an adult could be living this way. You know, obviously, in his mind, it was a level of arrested development or something, some kind of mental problem that I had, in his estimation, that I would have all this stuff around my room. The toys on my bookshelf, all the books, the comics, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, you know, this guy, he's got to be a more, you know, decent individual, a more grown-up adult.
Yeah, he's a real man compared to a guy with comics on his shelf, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, the same kind of mentality that gets the cosplayers that go to these conventions beaten up in an alleyway because fucking assholes are too sick-minded to understand that everybody has something they love. Everybody has a passion and is free to have whatever passion they so desire, at least within legal ramifications.
One more thing I just want to say is along the topic of you talking about, you know, cosplayers and geeks like us getting beaten up. When I was in, like, middle school, I actually got my life threatened by a kid because I had a comic book in class. I wasn't reading Cosmo or you know, any of the other crappy magazines with brainless, you know, mindless automatons, and the teacher did nothing about it. Because, you know, even the teacher couldn't understand why all the kids would be on the playground playing, and I'd be in the classroom reading a science book, or drawing, or reading a comic book, or sitting in the library. They treat you like a piece of shit, like you're an immature idiot, you're an imbecile because, you know, you like the things you like in the first place. But then when you defend your right to be who you are, and, you know, explain, hey, there's different walks of life, you know, you're the way you are, I'm the way I am, then they go harder and say that you're being, you know, you're fighting, you're becoming aggressive and violent, and you're being an idiot. When I was at a group home, as my brother was fighting for guardianship of me, you know, I got into some trouble. I faltered from my true self. I tried to conform to society. You know, I got into a pair of khakis and a suit shirt, and it didn't suit me, no pun intended. I tried to conform to the way society wanted me to be. I started talking, you know, like all the girls at the group home. I started smoking and drinking a little bit. But you know what? It didn't feel right. So I got back into being who I really was. And now that I'm an adult, you know, I got to realize I got to hold on to and keep a hold of my true self. You do whatever the hell you want, and you be who the hell you want to be.
And that's what it comes down to. That's a great way to basically wrap this video up. I think the root of this entire issue is the idea that, you know, you can't have self-confidence. You can't be confident in following your dreams or your passions, your interests, your curiosities. And that's the worst kind of thinking to, you know, adapt to yourself. That's the worst kind of thing. That's the best possible way to lose yourself and become a lemming among the mindless masses. I don't know, man. Basically, yes, to answer your question at the end of your video, I can tell you wholeheartedly that the two of us most definitely feel as you do about this particular topic. We've experienced it firsthand, we've observed it secondhand and thirdhand, and it's a crying shame is what it is. And I only love the fact that through this, you know, basically online medium where we can all communicate and talk back and forth, I've met a lot of people that have, you know, basically the same kind of aesthetic and thinking as we do. They read, they you know, pursue their dreams, they pursue their passions, their geekiness and everything like that. And it's a shame there's not more of us in this world, but at least we found each other. So keep going strong. And otherwise, that'll be it for both Click It and I. Say goodbye.
Have a good day.
And we'll catch you all later. Peace.